Amaka had perfected the art of disappearing. On a campus full of vibrant personalities and loud opinions, she moved through the days like a shadow, always there but never truly seen. Her baggy clothes helped. They hung loose on her slender frame, hiding curves she didn't want anyone to notice, making her just another face in the crowd. It was safer this way. No questions, no stares, no judgment. Yet, no matter how invisible she tried to be, one person always saw her: Ada. Her best friend had made it her life's mission to drag Amaka out of her self-made cocoon and thrust her into the spotlight she was so determined to avoid. And now, Ada had found her next grand plan. "Amaka, you'll love this. Trust me," Ada said, holding up a colorful flyer as they sat in the library. The flyer was bright and bold, covered in images of smiling students and dramatic stage lights. Amaka didn't even need to read the words to know it wasn't something she wanted to be part of. "What is it?" Amaka asked, cautiously eyeing Ada, who was practically bouncing in her chair. Ada grinned and slid the flyer across the table. "The university's Cultural Week. They're holding a fashion competition. Traditional outfits, modern twists, the whole thing. And guess what? You're entering." Amaka froze, her pencil hovering above her notebook. "What?" "You heard me," Ada said, her grin widening. "You're going to enter." Amaka blinked at her friend, then at the flyer. She picked it up and skimmed the words. "Annual Interdepartmental Fashion Competition. Show your creativity, your style, your culture." She dropped the paper like it burned her. "No, why not?" Ada leaned forward, her chin propped on her hand. "It's perfect for you." Amaka laughed a short, bitter sound. "Perfect? For me? Ada, have you met me? I'm not the kind of person who enters competitions. Especially not ones where people have to, look at me." Ada rolled her eyes. "That's the problem, Amaka. You're too used to hiding. You're gorgeous, and you don't even realize it. You've got so much to offer, but you keep hiding behind these sacks you call clothes." She gestured to Amaka's oversized sweatshirt and jeans. "I like my clothes," Amaka said defensively, pulling her sweatshirt closer around her. "And I like you," Ada countered. "Which is why I'm not going to let you keep hiding. You're entering this competition, and that's final." "No," Amaka said again, shaking her head firmly. "I don't want to stand on a stage. I don't want people staring at me. I don't care what you say. I'm not doing it." Ada sighed dramatically and leaned back in her chair. "You always do this, You underestimate yourself. You're smart, you're talented, you're beautiful." "Stop," Amaka interrupted, her cheeks flushing. "I'm not beautiful, Ada. I'm just normal, and that's fine. I don't need to stand out." Ada narrowed her eyes, her playful tone dropping. "You're not just normal, Amaka. You've spent so long hiding from people that you've forgotten what it feels like to be seen. Maybe it's time you reminded them, and yourself, what you're capable of." Amaka looked away, her chest tightening. She hated these conversations. Ada meant well, but she didn't understand. Ada was the bold one, the confident one. She could light up a room without even trying. Amaka, she was the girl who faded into the background, and she was okay with that. "I'm not doing it," Amaka said quietly, ending the conversation. Ada didn't push further, but the sly smile on her face told Amaka the matter wasn't over. That night, as Amaka sat cross-legged on her bed, reading a novel for class, her phone buzzed with a message. She picked it up and read the text, her stomach sinking. "Ada, guess what? I signed you up for the fashion competition. You're welcome." Amaka's heart stopped for a moment, then started again in a furious rhythm. She stared at the screen, willing the words to change, but they didn't. She immediately dialed Ada's number. "Hey, superstar," Ada answered cheerfully. "Ada," Amaka said, her voice low and dangerous. "What did you do?" "I signed you up," Ada said simply. "You were gonna say no, so I did it for you. Now you don't have a choice." "Ada," Amaka exclaimed, pacing her small room. "How could you do that? I told you I didn't want to do it. And I told you you'd be amazing." Ada replied, unfazed. "Look, I know you're scared, but sometimes you have to push through the fear. This is your chance, Amaka. Don't waste it." I can't believe you did this without asking me, Amaka said, her voice shaking. I can't. You can, Ada interrupted. You can do this, Amaka. You just don't know it yet. Please just show up tomorrow for the auditions. That's all I'm asking. If you hate it, you can quit. Deal? Amaka sat on the edge of her bed, her head in her hands. She wanted to say no, to tell Ada to leave her alone, but a small part of her, tiny and quiet, wondered what it would feel like to step out of her comfort zone, just this once. Fine, she said at last. I'll show up, but don't expect anything. That's all I need, Ada said, her voice bright. You won't regret this, I promise. The next afternoon, Amaka found herself standing outside the campus auditorium, her nerves threatening to overwhelm her. The sun was warm on her skin, but she felt cold. Students were bustling around, laughing and chatting, their excitement palpable. Amaka! Ada's voice rang out as she bounded toward her, a wide smile on her face. She looked vibrant in her brightly colored dress, her energy as infectious as ever. You made it, Ada said, grabbing Amaka's arm. Don't remind me, Amaka muttered, clutching her bag tightly. You're going to be amazing, Ada said, pulling her toward the entrance. Just trust me. Smile, be yourself, and walk like you own the place. Inside, the auditorium was alive with activity. Contestants were practicing their walks, adjusting their outfits, and chatting nervously. Amaka felt like an outsider in her loose jeans and oversized blouse. She glanced at Ada, who gave her an encouraging smile. Next contestant. Amaka Okafor. The voice echoed through the auditorium, and Amaka's heart stopped. Ada nudged her gently. Go on, she whispered. You've got this. Amaka took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The bright lights blinded her for a moment, and she could feel every eye in the room on her. Her hands shook, but she forced herself to talk. Tell us a bit about yourself, one of the judges said, a stylish woman with a warm smile. Amaka's voice trembled as she began to speak, but as she talked about her love for creative writing and her department's cultural contributions, she started to relax. The judges nodded, their expressions encouraging. When she finished, the applause from the audience was polite but genuine. Amaka stepped off the stage, her legs shaking, and found Ada waiting with a beaming smile. You were incredible, Ada said, hugging her tightly. Amaka shook her head, but she couldn't help the small smile that crept onto her face. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the disaster she had imagined. The moment they stepped outside the auditorium, Amaka felt like she could breathe again. The fresh air hit her face, and she finally loosened her grip on her bag. Her palms were still sweaty, and her legs felt like they were made of jelly. Ada walked beside her, practically skipping with excitement. You were brilliant, Ada said, beaming as she threw an arm around Amaka's shoulders. Did you hear the applause? Even the judges were smiling. That's huge, Amaka. Amaka shook her head, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. I was trembling the whole time. My voice sounded shaky, and my outfit, I looked ridiculous compared to everyone else. Ada stopped walking and turned to face her, hands on her hips. You did not look ridiculous. You looked like you, and you were amazing. That's what matters. Amaka glanced at the bustling campus around them, her shoulders slumping. I don't know, Ada. Everyone else looked so confident, so polished. I felt like I didn't belong. Ada grabbed her by the shoulders, her face serious now. Stop that. You belong just as much as anyone else. You're smart, you're talented, and whether you believe it or not, you're beautiful. The judges saw that. I saw that. Why can't you? Amaka didn't know how to respond. She wanted to argue, but the look in Ada's eyes made her pause. Ada wasn't just being her usual over-the-top self. She meant every word. Look, Ada continued, her voice softening. The hard part's over. You went up there and you didn't run away. That's a win already. Now all you have to do is keep going. One step at a time. Amaka sighed, rubbing the back of her neck. I just don't want to embarrass myself. Ada, what if I mess up in the next round? You won't, Ada said firmly. And even if you do, so what? Everyone messes up sometimes. The important thing is that you're trying. That's more than most people can say. Amaka gave her a small, reluctant smile. You're really not going to let me back out of this, are you? Not a chance, Ada said, grinning again. You're stuck with me now. The next day, Amaka sat in her dorm room, staring at the email from the competition organizers. She had made it to the next round. Part of her felt a small surge of pride, but it was quickly drowned out by a wave of anxiety. The next round would involve a cultural showcase, where contestants would talk about their department and their personal connection to Nigerian culture. And, of course, they'd have to wear something that reflected that culture. She glanced at her closet, which was filled with oversized blouses, plain t-shirts, and baggy jeans. Nothing she owned would work. She buried her face in her hands, groaning softly. Her phone buzzed, and she reached for it without looking. It was Ada as usual. Ada, meet me at the student center in 20 minutes. We're going shopping. Amaka rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling a little. Ada always seemed to know when she needed help, even when she didn't ask for it. She grabbed her bag and headed out, bracing herself for whatever Ada had planned. The student center was crowded, as usual, with students milling about, chatting, and grabbing snacks from the small kiosks. Amaka spotted Ada near the entrance, waving excitedly. Beside her was a tall, elegant woman in a brightly patterned dress. Amaka, over here, Ada called, beckoning her over. Amaka hesitated, feeling a little out of place, but she walked over anyway. Amaka, this is Mrs. Afolabi, Ada said, gesturing to the woman. She's a designer and one of the judges for the competition. Amaka's eyes widened. Oh, hello ma'am, she said nervously. Mrs. Afolabi smiled warmly and extended a hand. Hello, Amaka. It's a pleasure to meet you. Ada has told me all about you. She has? Amaka glanced at Ada, who grinned innocently. Yes, Mrs. Afolabi said, her tone kind. She said you're incredibly talented and that you're new to the world of competitions. I thought I'd offer some advice, and maybe a little help. Amaka blinked, unsure what to say. Help, she repeated. She's going to help us find you something to wear for the next round. Ada said, practically buzzing with excitement. Something that'll make you feel confident. Oh, I don't know, Amaka said quickly, holding up her hands. I don't think. Nonsense, Mrs. Afolabi said, cutting her off gently. You don't have to decide right now, but I want you to know that I'm here to support you. Competitions like this can be intimidating, but they're also an opportunity to grow. And sometimes, a good outfit can make all the difference. Amaka hesitated, glancing at Ada, who nodded encouragingly. Finally, she said, okay, I'll think about it. That's all I ask, Mrs. Afolabi said with a smile. Now, let's see what we can find. Spent the next hour browsing through racks of brightly colored fabrics and ready-made outfits. Ada flitted from one rack to another, holding up different options and chattering excitedly. Amaka, meanwhile, stood awkwardly by the dressing room, unsure how to handle the attention. Try this one, Ada said, handing her a fitted Ankara dress with bold, geometric patterns. Amaka stared at it, her stomach twisting. I don't think I can pull that off, she said quietly. You don't know until you try, Ada said firmly. Just try it on. Please. Reluctantly, Amaka took the dress and stepped into the dressing room. As she slipped it on, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. The dress hugged her curves in a way that felt both foreign and strangely empowering. She ran a hand over the fabric, unsure what to think. Amaka, let us see, Ada called from outside. Slowly, Amaka opened the door and stepped out. Ada gasped, her eyes lighting up. You look incredible, she said. Right, Mrs. Afolabi? Mrs. Afolabi nodded approvingly. It suits you perfectly. You carry yourself differently when you're wearing something that makes you feel confident. You look wonderful, Amaka. Amaka flushed, unsure how to respond. She wanted to believe them, but years of hiding couldn't be undone so easily. Still, she couldn't deny the flicker of pride she felt as she caught her reflection in the store's mirror. Maybe, she said softly, this isn't so bad. Next morning, Amaka arrived at the auditorium for the cultural showcase rehearsal. She wore the fitted Ankara dress, feeling both nervous and oddly excited. Ada had insisted on walking with her, chatting the whole way to keep her spirits up. "You're going to crush it," Ada said as they entered the auditorium. "Just remember to speak from the heart. The judges love authenticity." Amaka nodded, taking a deep breath. She glanced at the other contestants, who were practicing their presentations. Some looked confident and polished, while others seemed just as nervous as she felt. She swallowed hard, her palms sweating. When her name was called, she stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding. The lights were bright, but she forced herself to focus on the judges' faces. She began to speak, her voice trembling at first but growing steadier as she talked about her love for Nigerian literature and how it had shaped her understanding of culture. The judges nodded, their expressions thoughtful. When she finished, there was a smattering of applause from the audience. She stepped off the stage, her legs shaky but her heart lighter. "You were amazing," Ada whispered, pulling her into a quick hug. Amaka smiled, feeling a small spark of hope. Maybe Ada was right. Maybe she could do this after all. The excitement of the rehearsal had worn off by the next morning, leaving Amaka with a strange mix of pride and dread. She couldn't deny how good it had felt to stand on that stage and share a part of herself. But now the whispers had started. Everywhere she went on campus, she felt the weight of eyes on her, the quiet buzz of voices just out of earshot. It wasn't the good kind of attention either. She heard snippets of conversations in passing, her name mixed with laughter or doubtful tones. It made her stomach twist. "Did you see her yesterday?" A girl's voice drifted toward her as she walked to her next lecture. "I didn't even know she could talk. She looked so awkward in that dress." Another voice chimed in, like, "Who is she kidding?" Amaka quickened her pace, gripping the strap of her bag tightly. She tried to block out the voices, but they stuck to her like burrs, pricking at her confidence. By the time she reached the lecture hall, she was ready to sink into her usual back row seat and disappear. But Ada, of course, had other plans. "Amaka!" Ada waved her over from the middle of the hall, her bright smile cutting through Amaka's cloud of self-doubt. Reluctantly, Amaka made her way over, sliding into the seat beside her. "You okay?" Ada asked, her voice low enough not to draw attention. Amaka hesitated, then shook her head. "People are talking about me." "Let them talk," Ada said with a shrug. "People will always have something to say. It's not your job to care." Amaka frowned. "It's not that simple, Ada. They're laughing at me." "Then let them laugh," Ada said firmly, turning to face her. "You're doing something brave, Amaka. Most of those people wouldn't even dare to step on that stage. They're just jealous. I promise you." "I don't know," Amaka muttered, looking down at her notebook. "Maybe I should just quit." Ada's hand shot out, grabbing her arm. "Don't you dare." Amaka looked up, startled by the intensity in Ada's voice. "You're not quitting," Ada said, her eyes blazing. "Do you hear me? You're better than this. You're not going to let a bunch of insecure people stop you from doing something amazing." "But what if I'm not amazing?" Amaka whispered, her voice barely audible. Ada softened, her grip loosening. "You are, Amaka. You just don't see it yet. But I do. And I'm not going to let you give up on yourself." Later that day, Amaka found herself sitting in the student center, trying to study but failing miserably. The whispers from earlier still echoed in her mind, making it impossible to focus. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice someone standing in front of her until they spoke. "Amaka, right?" She looked up to see a tall, confident girl with striking features and a perfectly styled outfit. It was Billionaire, one of the other contestants in the competition. Amaka's stomach sank. She'd noticed Billionaire at the rehearsal, her polished presentation, her effortless grace. Everything about her screamed confidence. "Yes," Amaka said cautiously. "That's me." Billionaire smiled, but there was something sharp about it, like a blade hidden under silk. She slid into the seat across from Amaka without waiting for an invitation. "I just wanted to say how impressed I was with your presentation yesterday," Billionaire said, her tone smooth but not entirely warm. "You've got Potential. Thank you, Amaka said, unsure how to respond. Belanel leaned forward slightly, her smile widening. But, if I'm being honest, I think you're in over your head. These competitions aren't as easy as they seem. It takes a lot more than a pretty dress and a few nice words to win. Amaka stiffened, her fingers tightening around her pen. I know that, she said quietly. Do you? Belanel asked, raising an eyebrow. Because from what I've seen, you're not exactly competition material. Amaka's heart sank, but she forced herself to hold Belanel's gaze. Why are you telling me this? Belanel shrugged, leaning back in her chair. Just being honest. I figured you'd appreciate some friendly advice. Friendly? Amaka repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. Of course, Belanel said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Look, I know what it's like to be new to this kind of thing. Can be overwhelming. But if you're not careful, it can also be humiliating. Amaka's cheeks burned, but she refused to look away. I'll keep that in mind, she said tightly. Good, Belanel said, standing up. Anyway, best of luck. You'll need it. She walked away, her heels clicking against the floor, leaving Amaka sitting there with a storm of emotions churning inside her. Anger, embarrassment, and a flicker of determination all fought for space in her mind. That evening, Amaka sat in her dorm room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The dress from the rehearsal hung on the back of her chair, a reminder of how far she'd come and how much further she had to go. Belanel's words played over and over in her head. But so did Ada's. You're better than this. You're not going to let them stop you. She took a deep breath and reached for her phone. Without overthinking it, she called Ada. Hey, Ada answered on the first ring. What's up? I need your help, Amaka said. I don't want to quit. But I don't know how to do this. Ada's voice softened. Amaka, you're already doing it. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. But what if that's not enough? Amaka asked, her voice cracking. It is, Ada said firmly. And I'll be here every step of the way to remind you. For the first time in days, Amaka felt a glimmer of hope. She didn't know if she could win, but maybe, just maybe, she could prove to herself that she belonged. Next rehearsal came faster than Amaka expected. She arrived at the auditorium feeling nervous but determined. Ada had stayed up late with her the night before, helping her practice her walk and fine-tune her presentation. She wasn't perfect, but she was better. As she waited for her turn, she noticed Belanel watching her from across the room, her expression unreadable. Amaka straightened her back and held her head high, refusing to let Belanel's presence shake her. When her name was called, she stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding but her steps steady. The judges watched her closely as she spoke, their faces thoughtful. She could feel their eyes on her every move, but she pushed through the nerves and finished strong. As she left the stage, one of the judges, a kind-looking woman with glasses, smiled at her and said, Well done, Amaka. You've improved a lot. The words warmed her heart, and for the first time she felt like she might actually have a chance. At the end of the day, Amaka was exhausted but proud. She met Ada outside the auditorium, and her friend immediately pulled her into a hug. You killed it, Ada said, practically bouncing with excitement. I told you you could do this. Amaka laughed, her chest feeling lighter than it had in days. I couldn't have done it without you. Don't sell yourself short, Ada said, grinning. You're the one doing the work. I'm just here to cheer you on. As they walked back to their dorms, Amaka couldn't help but feel a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she was ready to face it head-on. The final rehearsal before the cultural showcase loomed large in Amaka's mind. She had spent the past few days walking a tightrope of determination and doubt, fueled by Ada's unwavering cheerleading and haunted by Belanel's cutting words. Each time she rehearsed, she improved just a little bit more, but the real test was just ahead. It was the morning of the rehearsal, and Amaka sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the Ankara dress hanging on the closet door. She hadn't touched it since the last fitting. Her fingers trembled as she reached out, brushing the fabric lightly. It was beautiful, far more beautiful than anything she'd ever owned. but wearing it felt like stepping into someone else's life. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was Ada. Ada. Ready? I'm waiting outside your dorm. Let's do this. Amaka sighed, picking up her phone to reply. Before she could type anything, there was a knock at the door. She didn't need to guess who it was. Amaka, Ada called, her voice muffled through the door. If you don't come out, I'm coming in. Amaka rolled her eyes but smiled despite herself. I'm coming, she said, opening the door. Ada stood there, dressed in a bright yellow jumpsuit that made her look like the sun itself. Her grin was as big as ever, but it softened when she saw Amaka's hesitant expression. Hey, Ada said gently. What's wrong? I don't know if I can do this, Amaka admitted, stepping aside to let Ada in. What if I mess up? What if I look ridiculous? You're not going to mess up, Ada said firmly. She walked over to the dress and held it up against Amaka. And you definitely won't look ridiculous. This dress was made for you. Trust me. Amaka bit her lip, her nerves gnawing at her confidence. But, no buts, Ada said, cutting her off. Do you remember what we talked about? You're doing this for you, not for Billionaire, not for the judges, not for anyone else. Just you. Amaka nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. Okay, let's go. The auditorium buzzed with activity as contestants gathered for the final rehearsal. Amaka's heart raced as she walked in, her dress neatly packed in a garment bag over her arm. She could feel the weight of the room's energy, the mix of nerves and excitement, and it made her stomach twist. Don't look so tense, Ada whispered, nudging her. You've got this. Amaka nodded but didn't reply. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on Billionaire, who stood near the stage, chatting and laughing with a group of other contestants. Billionaire's polished appearance and easy confidence made Amaka's insecurities bubble to the surface again. Focus on yourself, Ada said, following her gaze. Forget about her. Easier said than done, Amaka thought, but she forced herself to turn away and head to the dressing room to change. Amaka emerged in her fitted Ankara dress. The reaction was immediate. The other contestants turned to look, their conversations halting mid-sentence. She could feel their eyes on her, their silent judgments pressing down on her like a weight. You look stunning, Ada whispered, beaming. Own it, Amaka. Amaka swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly. She forced herself to take steady steps toward the stage, where the rehearsal was about to begin. Her turn came sooner than she expected. The coordinator called her name, and she stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure the judges could hear it. The lights were bright, making it hard to see the audience, but she knew they were there, watching, waiting. She took a deep breath and began her presentation. Her voice wavered at first, but as she spoke about her connection to Nigerian culture and the importance of celebrating heritage, she felt her confidence grow. The words came easier, flowing naturally as she shared her thoughts. She finished with a small, hesitant smile, and the judges nodded approvingly. Thank you, Amaka, one of the judges said, her voice warm. That was lovely. Amaka stepped off the stage, her legs shaky but her heart lighter. She caught Ada's eye in the audience, and her friend gave her a double thumbs up, mouthing, "You killed it." As the rehearsal continued, Amaka found a quiet corner backstage to sit and catch her breath. She felt proud of herself, but the weight of the day still lingered. Her moment of peace didn't last long, though. Billionaire appeared, her polished smile as sharp as ever. Amaka, Billionaire said, her tone sugary sweet. That was nice. Amaka looked up at her, wary. Thank you. Billionaire leaned against the wall, crossing her arms. You know, this competition isn't just about looking pretty and giving a good speech. It's about presence, confidence. Some people have it and some don't. Amaka frowned, feeling the sting of Billionaire's words. What's your point? My point, Billionaire said, her smile widening, is that you should be careful. People will start expecting more from you now. If you can't deliver, it'll be embarrassing. For you, I mean. Amaka clenched her fists, her chest tightening with a mix of anger and hurt. I'm not here to compete with you, Billionaire. Of course you're not, Billionaire said, her voice dripping with mock sincerity. Because there's no competition. Before Amaka could respond, Billionaire turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the floor. Amaka sat there, her confidence shaken once again. Ada found her backstage a few minutes later. She immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, sitting down beside Amaka. "Billionaire," Amaka said quietly. "She thinks I don't belong here." "Billionaire's full of hot air," Ada said, rolling her eyes. "Don't let her get to you." "But what if she's right?" Amaka whispered. "What if I'm not good enough?" Ada grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look up. "Listen to me, Amaka. Billionaire is scared of you. That's why she's trying to mess with your head. She knows you're a threat." Amaka shook her head. "I don't feel like a threat." "That's because you're too nice," Ada said, her voice firm. "But you don't have to be. You're stronger than you think. Amaka, don't let her win." Amaka took a deep breath, nodding slowly. "Okay, I'll try. That's my girl," Ada said, grinning. "Now, let's finish this rehearsal and show them what you've got." As she and Ada walked back to their dorms, the sun setting behind them, Ada turned to her with a smile. "You're amazing, you know that?" Amaka laughed softly. "I'm trying. And you're succeeding," Ada said. "One step at a time." For the first time in a long time, Amaka believed her, thumping with unease. "Did you see her during the rehearsal?" A girl's voice floated from behind her. Amaka didn't look back but slowed her pace to hear. "Yeah," another voice responded, low and conspiratorial. "I mean, she tried, but it was obvious she's out of her league. She looked so uncomfortable in that dress," the first voice added. "Honestly, I don't know why she's even bothering." Amaka's cheeks burned, and she quickened her steps, wanting nothing more than to disappear. She pushed open the lecture hall door and slipped into a seat in the back row, hoping to avoid further attention. But even as the lecturer began speaking, she couldn't shake the sting of their words. After class, Ada found her sitting under a tree outside, her head resting on her knees. Ada plopped down beside her, crossing her legs and tilting her head to get a better look at Amaka's face. "What's wrong?" Ada asked, her voice gentle but knowing. Amaka didn't look up. "People are talking about me," she muttered. "And not in a good way." "Of course they are," Ada said matter-of-factly. "You're doing something big. People love to talk about anyone who stands out." Amaka lifted her head, frowning. "I'm not trying to stand out. I don't know. I feel like I don't belong." Ada shook her head, her brows furrowing. "Stop that, Amaka. You do belong. People are only talking because they don't have the guts to do what you're doing. Let them talk." "It's not that easy," Amaka said softly. "It feels like everyone's waiting for me to fail." "Well, then you'll just have to prove them wrong," Ada said with a grin. "Show them what you're made of." Amaka gave her a small, hesitant smile. "You always make it sound so simple." "Because it is," Ada said, standing up and brushing off her jeans. She extended a hand to Amaka. "Come on, let's grab lunch. You need to eat if you're gonna keep fighting." Amaka hesitated but eventually took her friend's hand. Ada's energy was infectious, and even though doubt still lingered in her mind, she couldn't help but feel Later that afternoon, Amaka found herself walking across campus, her thoughts swirling. She was replaying the whispers she'd heard that morning, trying to make sense of how she'd become such a topic of conversation. She didn't even notice Billionaire until he called her name. "Amaka!" She stopped abruptly, turning to see him jogging toward her. His easy smile and relaxed demeanor made her nerves settle, if only slightly. "Hey," she said, shifting her bag on her shoulder. "You're hard to catch," he said with a laugh. "I've been meaning to talk to you since the rehearsal." "Oh," Amaka said, unsure what to expect. "What about?" "I just wanted to say I thought you did really well," Billionaire said, his tone sincere. "You spoke with so much heart. It was refreshing." Amaka felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure if it was good enough." "It was more than good enough," Billionaire said. "You're standing out for all the right reasons." Amaka glanced at him, surprised. "You think so?" "Absolutely," he said, nodding. "Don't let the noise get to you. People always talk. But it doesn't mean anything." She smiled, his words easing some of the tension that had been weighing her down. Thanks, Billionaire. That means a lot. No problem, he said, giving her a friendly pat on the shoulder. And if you ever need help with anything, let me know. I've got your back. As he walked away, Amaka felt a small surge of confidence. Maybe she wasn't as alone in this as she thought. Evening, however, her confidence was tested again. A post on the campus forum caught her eye. It was a thread about the competition, and as she scrolled through the comments, her stomach twisted. Did you see that Amaka girl? She's trying too hard. She's cute, but she doesn't have what it takes to win. Billionaire is the real star. Amaka should just quit before she embarrasses herself. Amaka slammed her laptop shut, her chest tightening. Why was it so hard for people to just leave her alone? She hadn't asked for their opinions. She didn't want to be a target. She just wanted to prove to herself that she could do this. A knock at her door startled her. Amaka, it's me, Ada called from the other side. Amaka opened the door, her face pale. They're talking about me online now, she said, her voice trembling. Ada stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Let me guess. Campus forums? Amaka nodded. Ugh, I hate those things, Ada said, plopping onto the bed. They're full of bored people with nothing better to do. Don't let it get to you. It's hard not to, Amaka said, sitting down beside her. I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle. You're not, Ada said firmly. You're winning, Amaka. That's why they're talking. They're threatened by you. You've got something they don't. And what's that? Amaka asked, her voice tinged with doubt. Heart, Ada said, grinning. You're real, Amaka. That scares people who are only pretending to have it together. Amaka sighed, leaning back against the wall. I don't know if I can do this, Ada. Feels like too much. You can do this, Ada said, reaching for her hand. I know it feels overwhelming, but you're stronger than you think. And you're not alone. I'm with you every step of the way. Amaka looked at her friend, her chest tightening with gratitude. Thanks, Ada. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd be fine, Ada said with a wink. But it's more fun with me around. The next day, Amaka walked into the rehearsal with a renewed sense of determination. She had spent the night replaying Ada's words in her head, letting them drown out the negativity she'd read online. She wasn't going to let the whispers, the stares, or the posts get to her. Not today. As she stepped onto the stage for her turn, she held her head high, her voice steady as she delivered her presentation. The judges watched her closely, their expressions thoughtful. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before one of the judges smiled and said, Well done, Amaka. That was a big improvement. Her chest swelled with pride as she stepped off the stage, catching Ada's excited wave from the audience. But just as she was starting to feel good, she heard Billionaire's voice behind her. Not bad, Billionaire said, her tone casual but laced with condescension. You're improving, but don't get too comfortable. The real test is coming. Amaka turned to face her, her jaw tightening. I'm not trying to compete with you, Billionaire. I'm here to prove something to myself. Billionaire smirked, crossing her arms. That's cute, but this is a competition, Amaka. There's only room for one winner. Amaka held her ground, her voice steady. We'll see. As the rehearsal ended and the contestants filed out of the auditorium, Amaka walked beside Ada, her shoulders square and her steps firm. For the first time, she felt like she could face whatever came next. You did great today, Ada said, bumping her shoulder. Billionaire's just scared because she knows you're a threat. Amaka smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in days. Thanks, Ada. I think I'm starting to believe it. That's the spirit, Ada said, grinning. Now let's get some food. You've earned it. As they walked across campus, the sun setting behind them, Amaka couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, she was ready to face it head-on. Amaka was finally beginning to feel like she had a rhythm. The cultural showcase was just days away, and she had practiced her presentation enough times to recite it in her sleep. Ada made sure she stayed motivated, peppering her with encouragement every time her doubts crept back in. Even Billionaire had checked in once or twice, offering words of support that made her feel lighter. But deep down, Amaka knew the whispers hadn't stopped. On the morning of the campus forum, a public event meant to promote the cultural showcase and give contestants a platform to interact with students, Amaka woke up with a knot in her stomach. Ada had called earlier, buzzing with excitement about the event, but Amaka couldn't shake the nervous energy building in her chest. She spent most of the morning pacing her dorm room, rehearsing her answers to possible questions. What if they asked something she didn't know how to answer? What if she stumbled over her words? What if Billionaire decided to embarrass her in front of everyone? A sharp knock at the door startled her out of her thoughts. "Amaka, open up," Ada's voice called from the hallway. "We're going to be late." Amaka opened the door to find Ada holding 2 steaming cups of tea. "Here," Ada said, handing her one. "You need this. You look like you've seen a ghost." "I feel like I have," Amaka muttered, taking the cup and sipping slowly. Ada raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong?" "What's not wrong?" Amaka said, setting the cup down on her desk. "What if I mess up? What if someone asks me something I can't answer? What if—" "Stop," Ada said firmly, holding up a hand. "You're overthinking again. You've got this, Amaka. You've practiced, you're prepared, and you're going to be amazing. Trust me." Amaka sighed. "I don't know, Ada. It feels like everyone's just waiting for me to fail." "Let them wait," Ada said with a shrug. "Because it's not going to happen." The forum was held in the campus amphitheater, a wide, open space surrounded by rows of stone seating. Students were already filing in when Amaka and Ada arrived, and the buzz of chatter filled the air. Amaka felt her nerves spike as she scanned the crowd, but Ada's reassuring presence beside her kept her grounded. They found seats near the front, where the contestants were expected to sit. Billionaire was already there, dressed in a sleek, fitted outfit that screamed confidence. She gave Amaka a once-over and smirked, her gaze lingering just long enough to make Amaka's stomach twist. "Don't let her get to you," Ada whispered, nudging Amaka's arm. "She's just trying to mess with your head." Amaka nodded, but her palms felt clammy. She gripped the edge of her seat, willing herself to stay calm. The forum began with a brief introduction from the event coordinator, who explained the purpose of the cultural showcase and how it aimed to celebrate the diversity and creativity of Nigerian heritage. Then, one by one, the contestants were invited to speak about their inspirations and experiences in the competition so far. When it was Amaka's turn, she stood up on shaky legs and made her way to the microphone. The crowd fell quiet, their eyes fixed on her. She could feel the weight of their stares, but she took a deep breath and began. "I've always been someone who preferred to stay in the background," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "But this competition has taught me that stepping out of your comfort zone can be scary, but it's also where growth happens." She spoke about her love for storytelling, how Nigerian culture inspired her writing, and how this competition had pushed her to embrace parts of herself she'd spent years hiding. As she spoke, she noticed a shift in the audience. The skepticism in their eyes softened, replaced by curiosity and, in some cases, encouragement. When she finished, there was a smattering of applause, and she returned to her seat, her chest heaving with relief. "You nailed it," Ada whispered, squeezing her hand. Amaka gave her a small, grateful smile, but the warmth was short-lived. Coordinator opened the floor for questions, inviting students to direct their inquiries to the contestants. At first, the questions were light and harmless, about favorite cultural traditions or how they balance schoolwork with the competition. But then a hand shot up from the middle of the crowd, and Amaka's stomach dropped. It was Billionaire. "Amaka," Billionaire said, her voice smooth and laced with feigned politeness. "You've mentioned that this competition is pushing you out of your comfort zone. But don't you think it's unfair to compete in something you're clearly not prepared for? I mean, some of us have been working on our craft for years." The crowd murmured, and Amaka felt her face grow hot. She could see Billionaire's smug expression, daring her to respond. Ada whispered urgently, "Don't let her get to you. You've got this." Amaka took a shaky breath and leaned toward the microphone. "You're right," she said, her voice calm despite the storm raging inside her. I don't have years of experience, and I'm not as polished as some of the other contestants. But I don't think this competition is just about being perfect. It's about growth, and I've already grown so much just by being here." The crowd murmured again, but this time, the tone was different. Curious, even supportive. Belanel's smirk faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. "Well," Belanel said, her tone icy, "let's hope that's enough." The forum wrapped up. Amaka felt like she could finally breathe again. The tension in her chest eased as students began filing out of the amphitheater, some stopping to compliment her on her presentation. "You handled that beautifully," Ada said as they walked back toward the dorms. "I wanted to strangle Belanel, but you put her in her place." Amaka smiled faintly, but her mind was still replaying the moment over and over. "I just hope I didn't make a fool of myself." "You didn't," Ada said firmly. "If anything, you showed everyone how strong you are." Later that evening, Amaka sat in her dorm room, reflecting on the day. Belanel's words had stung, but they hadn't broken her. For the first time, she realized that she didn't have to be perfect to prove she belonged. She just had to keep trying, keep pushing, and keep believing in herself. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Amaka was ready to face it, one step at a time. The day of the final showcase arrived faster than Amaka expected. The tension on campus was palpable, and the air buzzed with excitement as students gathered in groups to discuss who they thought would win. Amaka tried to stay focused as she got ready, but her hands trembled as she smoothed the fabric of her new dress. Ada was sitting cross-legged on Amaka's bed, watching her intently. "Stop fidgeting," she said, reaching out to grab Amaka's hand. "You're going to be amazing." Amaka sighed, pulling her hand away to adjust the neckline of the gown Mrs. Afalabi had created for her. It was another fitted Ankara piece, elegant but understated, with soft patterns that complemented her frame. It was the kind of dress that made her feel both exposed and powerful at the same time. "What if I trip on stage?" Amaka asked, her voice shaky. "Or forget my lines? Or—" "Stop," Ada interrupted, standing up and placing both hands on Amaka's shoulders. "We've practiced for this. You've walked that stage a million times in rehearsals. You know your lines by heart. You've got this, Amaka. I believe in you." Amaka looked at her friend, grateful but still unsure. "What if I'm not good enough?" "You are good enough," Ada said firmly. "And tonight, everyone else is going to see that too." The auditorium was packed when they arrived, the buzz of excited chatter filling the space. Amaka's heart raced as she peeked through the curtain, seeing the rows of students, judges, and faculty members waiting for the show to begin. The lights on the stage seemed brighter than ever, and the thought of stepping into them made her stomach twist. Ada nudged her gently. "Don't think about the crowd," she whispered. "Just focus on you. This is your moment." Amaka nodded, taking a deep breath. She looked down at her dress, smoothing the fabric again as if it would somehow calm her nerves. The show began with a burst of music and introductions, each contestant stepping onto the stage to applause. Amaka's turn came quickly, and she felt her legs turn to jelly as the coordinator called her name. "You're up," Ada whispered, giving her a reassuring smile. Amaka stepped forward, the lights blinding her for a moment as she walked onto the stage. The applause was polite but not overwhelming, and she forced herself to keep moving, her head held high. Her presentation started smoothly. She spoke about her love for Nigerian storytelling, weaving in personal anecdotes about how her family's traditions had shaped her perspective. Her voice trembled slightly at first, but as she continued, it grew steadier, more confident. She could feel the audience leaning in, listening intently to her words. "And that's why I believe our culture is not just something to preserve. It's something to celebrate," she concluded, her heart pounding as she stepped back from the microphone. The applause was louder this time, and she caught a glimpse of Ada in the audience, clapping furiously with a wide grin on her face. As the other contestants took their turns, Amaka returned to the wings, her nerves still buzzing. Belanel was up next, her sleek gown sparkling under the stage lights as she strode to the microphone. Her voice was smooth and confident, her presentation polished and practiced. She commanded the stage with an ease that made Amaka's earlier doubts resurface. When Billionaire finished, the applause was thunderous, and Amaka couldn't help but feel a pang of insecurity. She glanced at Ada, who mouthed, "You're better," with a wink, but it didn't completely ease the knot in her stomach. The final portion of the showcase was the runway segment, where each contestant would walk the stage in their cultural attire, showcasing their poise and personality. Amaka stood in line backstage, her palms sweaty as she waited for her turn. "You look nervous," Billionaire said, her voice low and dripping with false concern. She stood a few feet away, adjusting her earrings. Amaka didn't reply, focusing instead on steadying her breathing. "Don't worry," Billionaire continued, stepping closer. "It's natural to feel out of place in a competition like this. Not everyone is cut out for it." Amaka looked at her, her jaw tightening. "If you're trying to intimidate me, it's not going to work." Billionaire smirked, her eyes narrowing. "I'm just being honest. This isn't your scene, Amaka. But good luck out there. You'll need it." Before Amaka could respond, the stage coordinator called her name. She straightened her shoulders, her heart pounding as she stepped into the light. Walk down the runway felt like the longest moment of Amaka's life. The lights were blinding, and the eyes of the audience bore into her, but she focused on each step, one at a time. Her dress flowed gracefully as she moved, and she could feel the fabric swish around her ankles. When she reached the end of the runway, she paused, turning slightly to give the audience a full view of her outfit. Her chest felt tight, but she forced a small, confident smile. The applause was scattered at first but grew louder as she made her way back to the wings. Ada was waiting for her, practically bouncing with excitement. "You were incredible," she whispered, pulling Amaka into a quick hug. "You looked so confident up there." Amaka smiled, her nerves starting to fade. "I just hope it was enough." The final results were announced at the end of the night, the tension in the auditorium thick as the judges took the stage to deliver their verdict. Amaka sat with the other contestants, her hands clenched in her lap as the coordinator read through the list of awards. "And now, for the winner of this year's cultural showcase," the coordinator announced, pausing for dramatic effect. "The contestant who displayed exceptional creativity, confidence, and authenticity, Amaka Okafor." The room erupted in applause, and for a moment, Amaka couldn't move. She stared at the stage in disbelief, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. Ada nudged her hard. "Go," she whispered, laughing. "That's you." Amaka stood on shaky legs, making her way to the stage as the applause grew louder. The coordinator handed her a bouquet of flowers and a plaque, and she turned to face the audience, her heart swelling with pride. "Congratulations," one of the judges said, smiling warmly. "You earned this." Amaka blinked back tears, unable to find the words to reply. She looked out at the crowd, catching Ada's beaming face in the front row, and felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She had done it. Against all odds, she had proven to herself and everyone else that she belonged. The applause still echoed in Amaka's ears as she walked off the stage, clutching the plaque and bouquet tightly against her chest. Her heart was pounding, and her face felt warm under the glow of the auditorium lights. She couldn't believe it. She had won. The moment felt surreal, like a dream she hadn't dared to have. Ada was waiting in the wings, practically bouncing on her heels. The moment Amaka stepped off the stage, Ada threw her arms around her in a tight hug. "You did it," Ada exclaimed, pulling back to beam at her. "I told you, didn't I? I told you you could do it." Amaka laughed, her voice shaky with emotion. "I still can't believe it," she said, looking down at the plaque in her hands. "I never thought this could actually happen." "Well, believe it," Ada said, grinning, "because it did. You were amazing up there, Amaka. You earned this." Before Amaka could reply, a crowd of students began to gather around her, congratulating her and offering kind words. She tried to take it all in, but it felt overwhelming. The attention, the compliments. It was so far from the quiet, unnoticed life she was used to. "Amaka!" Damelaire's voice cut through the crowd, and she turned to see him making his way toward her. His smile was as bright as ever, his easy confidence radiating as he stopped in front of her. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "You were incredible tonight." "Thank you," Amaka said, her cheeks flushing. "I couldn't have done it without Ada and everyone else who believed in me." "Give yourself some credit," Billionaire said. "You did this. You showed everyone who you are, and it was inspiring." Amaka opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, Billionaire appeared, her expression unreadable. The crowd around Amaka quieted as Billionaire stepped forward, her sleek gown shimmering under the lights. "Well," Billionaire said, her voice calm but edged with something Amaka couldn't quite place. "I guess congratulations are in order." Amaka blinked, unsure of how to respond. "Thank you," she said cautiously. Billionaire's smile didn't reach her eyes, but she nodded. "You surprised me tonight. I didn't think you had it in you, but you proved me wrong." The tension in the air was thick, and Amaka felt Ada step closer to her side, a silent show of support. Amaka took a deep breath, summoning her courage. "Thank you," she said again, this time with more confidence. "I know I still have a lot to learn, but this was a big step for me." Billionaire's smile faltered slightly. Ada let out a low whistle. "Did that just happen?" Amaka nodded slowly, her chest feeling lighter. For the first time, Billionaire's words didn't sting. They didn't have power over her anymore. The celebration continued late into the night. Amaka found herself surrounded by friends, classmates, and even strangers who wanted to congratulate her. She smiled until her cheeks ached, the warmth of their support making her heart swell. But as the crowd began to thin, she found a quiet corner to sit and collect her thoughts. Ada joined her a few moments later, holding 2 cups of juice. "Thought you could use this," she said, handing one to Amaka. "Thanks," Amaka said, taking a sip. "It's been a lot." "In the best way," Ada said, nudging her playfully. "Come on, don't tell me you're not enjoying this." "I am," Amaka admitted, a small smile tugging at her lips. "It's just new. I've spent so much time trying not to be seen. This is different." "Different is good," Ada said. "You're finally stepping into who you are, Amaka, and people love you for it." Amaka looked down at her cup, her thoughts swirling. "It's not just about the competition," she said softly. "It's about proving to myself that I can do this, that I don't have to hide anymore." Ada smiled, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "And you did. I'm so proud of you, Amaka." Next day, the buzz around campus was still strong. Students stopped Amaka in the halls to congratulate her. Professors smiled at her in passing, and even the campus forum was filled with positive comments for once. It was overwhelming, but in a good way. As she walked to class, she found Billionaire waiting outside the lecture hall. He grinned when he saw her, waving her over. "Hey," he said as she approached. "How's the new campus celebrity?" Amaka laughed, shaking her head. "I'm not a celebrity." "You are now," Billionaire said. "Everyone's talking about you." And for good reason, Amaka felt her cheeks flush. "It still feels strange," she admitted, "but I'm getting used to it." "You should," Billionaire said, "because you deserve it." They walked into the lecture hall together, and Amaka couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She wasn't the invisible girl anymore. She was someone who had faced her fears and come out stronger on the other side. The weeks passed. Life began to settle into a new normal. Amaka continued her classes, but now she found herself embracing opportunities she would have shied away from before. She joined a creative writing club, started mentoring younger students, and even submitted one of her short stories to a national competition. Ada, of course, was her biggest cheerleader. "You're unstoppable now," Ada said one afternoon as they walked across campus. "Next thing you know, you'll be running for student government." Amaka laughed. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." "I'm serious," Ada said, grinning. "You've got the talent, the confidence, and now the recognition. You can do anything, Amaka." Amaka smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. For the first time, she believed it. The journey to self-acceptance hadn't been easy, but as Amaka looked back on the months leading up to the cultural showcase, she realized how far she had come. She wasn't the same girl who hid behind baggy clothes and avoided